Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to Road to the Blue Map Playoff Edition, live from Buffalo Wild Wings in Gadsden, Alabama. I want to thank Buffalo Wild Wings as well as Excel for sponsoring this programming, allowing us to be here and break down all of the action over the next 5 weeks. Caleb Brooks, Reggie Davis here with you to start things off. And Reggie, here we are, playoffs right here. It is time to get things rolling, and it's crazy to think that we're now 11 weeks into this AHSAA season, and we know which 32 teams per classification are going to be competing for a state championship.
Yeah, you're right, man. It seems like the season just started yesterday, and here we are at playoff time. You know, and it's crazy to think in a few weeks we're going to be crowning state champions in classes 1A through 7A.
When you look at, 1A through 7A, it's wide open. You know, there's a lot of years that you go into it with an idea of, hey, this certain team is probably the favorite. To me, this year, when you look around the state, I don't know that outside of maybe one or two classifications, is if there is just that one team that you can point to in all these classifications that everybody feels like is going to be able to win a state championship this year.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think this is the most wide open year we've had in a while in Alabama. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs this year and seeing how things shake out.
We'll get started now with our matchups here, breaking down some of the 7A action that's going to be going on in the state. In the north side, Hoover going to be hosting Bob Jones in round number 1. The Hoover Bucks, a great year. You know, they lost game number 1 to Auburn, 17-14, and everybody just kind of started writing Hoover off. And all they did was win 9 straight games after losing Auburn, including a victory over Thompson. They get to host Bob Jones, and it's like me and Bo have talked about all year. Until one of these Huntsville teams can come down and beat a Birmingham team in the playoffs, you favor the Birmingham side.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, man. I mean, that Birmingham region, I got to see a lot of those teams play over the last couple of years with Gadsden City being in that region, and Hoover's going to be Hoover. You know, they got a new coaching staff that came in, and I think people thought that Hoover was going to be a little down this year. I saw them in the spring, and I was like, Hoover's going to be Hoover this year. They're going to be tough. Wade Waldrop, like I mentioned, came in to take over the Hoover program when Josh Niblett left and went to Gainesville, Georgia. He's in his first year at Hoover. And then you have Kelvis White coaching for Bob Jones. He's in his third year. You know, they've had an up and down season, but I think that Huntsville region this year was a little tough because those teams seemed to beat up on each other. And there was a couple teams that probably should have been in the playoffs, and they just missed out on it. All time in this series, Hoover leads Bob Jones 7-0. And the last time these two teams met was in 2018. That was also a Hoover victory. They came out on top 26-18. So this is going to be an intriguing matchup. You know, my question is, will Bob Jones go down and give Hoover a fight? Because this game, I actually do remember that 2018 game, and Bob Jones came in, I think they were leading late in that game. So this is going to be an interesting matchup at the Hoover Met this week.
Yeah, going to be a really fun one. Another one there in 7A. You got Hewitt-Trussville traveling to Florence. Florence, a team that lost their coach, and Coach Wade Waldrop, as he went down to Hoover. But it hadn't affected their record. It hadn't affected their season. They're a 2 seed. They're 8-2. They went 6-1 in that Huntsville region. Tell us a little bit about that matchup there between Hewitt-Trussville as they travel up to Florence on Friday.
Kenny Morrison came in to Florence this year. He came from Tennessee. He coached at Austin. It was Austin or Decatur, one of those Decatur schools. He coached there previously, and he came in, and Florence is rolling. And if there's going to be a North team to beat one of these Birmingham teams this year, Florence is probably that one team that can do it. Then on the other side, you got Hewitt-Trussville. They're 7-3, 5-2 in the region. Josh Floyd, he's in his 9th season at Hewitt-Trussville. He's been very successful with a high-powered, fast-paced, husky-fast offense, as they call it. So I think this game is going to be a very high-scoring game. It's going to be a great matchup between these two teams. They've only met once before in 2017. Hewitt-Trussville won that game 45-35, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this game's going to turn out.
Now flipping things over to lower classifications, we'll talk about 2A now. And when you look at 2A North, first matchup that's listed right there, Lexington at North Sand Mountain at Lexington there in round number 1. Talk about that game and how big of a matchup this is for North Sand Mountain having to go on the road to Lexington here in the first round.
Man, that's going to be a very long trip for those guys. Yeah. Lexington is up in the northwest corner of Alabama near the Florence area. that are not familiar with that, Lexington finished number 1 in Region 8. They were 8-2, 6-0 in the region. Jason Lard's been there 13 years at Lexington, and these guys are 2-1 against North Sand Mountain. And North Sand Mountain is a team that I would not want to face in the first round of playoffs because they came out of a very tough region with Fife and Pisgah and those guys like that. So in Collinsville, so they've been battle tested. So these guys are ready to go on the road and show that, hey, you can't look at our 4-6 record and think that we're at your typical 4 seed. They're not. Keith Kirby's been there 7 years. The last time these two teams met was in 2017. North Sand Mountain actually won that game 32-16. So this is going to be a great matchup in the first round. Like I said, North Sand is one of those teams I wouldn't want to see this early.
Another big matchup, Locust Fork going to be going to Tuscaloosa Academy. Tuscaloosa Academy, a new AHSAA team.
Yep.
They applied in time, whereas Pike Lib didn't down there, and so that's why they weren't eligible for the first 2 years of the playoffs.
Right.
Tuscaloosa Academy did. Look, this is a program, they've come in and they've made a lot of noise this year, and now they're going to be hosting Locust Fork there at home in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's huge for those guys. And, you mentioned Pike Liberal Arts. Tuscaloosa Academy and Pike Liberal Arts actually played each other in the AHSAA championship game last year, and I think Pike Liberal won that matchup. So you knew coming in to the AHSAA, Tuscaloosa Academy was going to have a very strong team. And, they got a veteran coach. He's coached in the AHSAA ranks for several years, Josh Wright. He's in his second season at Tuscaloosa Academy. And his resume speaks for itself. The guy won 4 championships at Bessemer Academy. He actually followed Mark Freeman at Bessemer Academy, and now he's at Tuscaloosa Academy. And these two teams obviously have never met with TA coming in from the AHSAA. Then you got a Locust Fork team. These guys have been in some shootouts this year. They know how to score. They can score a lot of points. Billy Adams, he's in his second season at Locust Fork. So this should be a very good matchup in the first round.
Another big one here, going to be happening right around this area. Red Bay traveling all the way to Fife, and from what I've heard, this is a very confident Red Bay team coming over here to take on the Fife Red Devils.
That's what I'm hearing too. I think this same scenario played out in 2019, and that was the last time these two teams met. And Fife walked away with a 45-6 win in the first round of the playoffs. And actually, Fife is 4-0 against Red Bay, but these guys seem to think that they can come in and knock the Red Devils off. I don't know. We'll see. But, the X factor for Fife is they got Coach Paul Benefield coaching them. Coach Benefield's been there for 26 years. His record is 332 and 55 overall, and that's an 86% winning percentage. And another thing about Fife, they can score. They can score, and they can score quick. They've got several guys that can run the ball. They have actually outscored their opponents this year 489 to 59. So Fife can score pretty often and quick. Heath Childers, he's in his second year at Red Bay. Red Bay's a traditionally strong team in 2A. They're always in it every year, so they're going to come in. They're going to play some football, but Fife is going to be Fife.
Fife's going to be Fife, and kind of what we talked about with the Huntsville region. Until someone at 2A knocks off Fife, that they own 2A.
Yeah, I agree. They went to 3A. They won a championship there, made the quarterfinals, and now they're back home in 2A. So it's just everything as usual.
Another one of those 3-2 matchups, Winston County going to Cleveland. The 3-2 matchups are always interesting because a lot of times you get way more even matchups than these, and this seems to be one of those that is a pretty even matchup between Cleveland and Winston County.
You're exactly right. Cleveland, came off they're the 2A runner-ups from last season. Their coach ended up retiring, and they brought Will Glaze in from Central Phoenix City. Will Glaze, fantastic coach. I got to know him when he coached at Gadsden City. He's got a great offensive mind, and when I saw that hire, I knew right away Cleveland was going to be fine. They went 7-3 and 5-1 in the region. So Cleveland, they've been in the dogfight. They've had some tough games this season. Then you flip over Winston County. Mark Mitchell's been there for 5 years. So in Winston County, another one of those teams that's always good. They're going to be competitive. They're going to come out and play some hard-nosed football. And these two teams actually last met in 2017, and Cleveland won that game 20-8.
Should be a really, really interesting matchup there. Southeastern going to be hosting Lamar County. That's one of those 1-4 matchups. Southeastern favored by a long shot going into this one. And, look, you never know. We see a 4 seed upset a 1 seed every single year in the first round.
Yeah.
But it's one of those where if Southeastern goes and plays their type of football, they should be able to control this football.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Kevin Bird's been there in 5 years. Southeastern is a fairly new school, fairly new program, and every year they've gotten a little bit better every year. And now I think everything that Coach Bird has done, I think it's starting to pay off for those guys. They win 9-1 on the season, 6-0 in Region 6. Very strong ball club. They played a very good JB Pennington team the last game of the season, and I think that was a defensive battle. It was like a 12-7 loss for Southeastern, but very good team, and this is their first region title in school history. And Lamar County, if you know Alabama football, they're always in the playoffs every year. They're a traditionally strong program. They're going to compete. They're going to play with you. Robert Bradford's been there 6 years, and so very good matchup. You never know what could happen. This is the first meeting between these two ball clubs, so we'll see what happens with this one.
Another exciting matchup that'll be happening right up here around this area. Pisgah going to be hosting Hatton in the first round. Look, it was a great year for Pisgah.
Yeah.
Outside of one game, they ran into Fife, and we've talked about how good Fife is.
Right.
But for Pisgah to be in this position, got to give Coach Pruitt a lot of credit for what he's been able to do with that program.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you 100%. Coach Pruitt, people that don't know, he is related to Jeremy Pruitt that coached at Tennessee, and he's also related. His dad is the legendary Dale Pruitt that coached at Plainview for so many years and is actually back at Plainview. He has built that program back to where Pisgah football used to be. They finished the year 8-2 and 6-1 in the region. Finished runner-up in Region 7 to 5. Coach Pruitt's done a very good job. That fan base up there, they absolutely love him. They're excited about where Pisgah football is going, and they're looking to make a deep run in the playoffs. But on the other side, you've got a very strong Hatton team this year. They finished 7-2 and 4-2 in the region as a 3 seed in Region 8. Hatton, I don't know if many people know, R.A. Hubbard closed up in Lawrence County, and if I'm not mistaken, several of those kids from R.A. Hubbard went to Hatton, and Hatton's had a very good year. And I've had them kind of circled all season as a team to watch in 2A. And Denton Bolin, he's the coach there, and this is the first meeting between these two guys.
Should be a really big matchup there for Pisgah, looking to get a win and advance in the playoffs. Here's another team that a lot of people are talking about. Could be one of them that knock off this Fife team at 2A. That's going to be Aliceville. They're going to be hosting West End in the first round. Look, I visited Aliceville last year before the season started, and when I walked away, I said, man, this place looks like Lynette High School. And that's
Right.
what they look like.
Yeah.
You look at their players and all that, and they
yeah.
look like the Lynette teams that had gone and won some state championships over the last couple of years. If there is anybody who could maybe give Fife some problems from an athletic standpoint and things like that, I think Fife would be favored in the game, but Aliceville's definitely one of those teams that could give them some problems from an athletic standpoint.
You're exactly right. These two teams, I think the first Fife game we went to at Average Joe's was Aliceville and Fife in the semifinals in 2018. And Aliceville, they've got some dudes out there, and can they compete with Fife? Yes, they can. Grady Griffin is in his second season there. We've got to know some of those guys down at Aliceville. We met them at a 707 camp. They're very excited about this team this year, and they feel like they can win 2A this year. On the other side, we've got West End right here in Etowah County. I've personally gone up, and I've got to know those guys, covered them some, watched them in the preseason jamboree, went to a couple of games. Coach Sewell, he's in the second season. He is doing a fantastic job at West End. People that know football in this area know back in the 90s, West End was a dominant team in Class 2A, and Coach Sewell is building that program back to that same dominance that they had back in the 90s.
Should be a really fun matchup. Another big one that's from around up here, Collinsville going to Falkville, and I think for Falkville, they would have rather seen any other 3 seed than the 3 seed they're about to see with this Collinsville team.
I'm telling you, Collinsville, you look at their roster and you look at the grades that these guys are in, they have a very, very young team. And the fact that they're 8-2 and they finished 5-2 in that region tells you a lot about those players and how they've bought in. And not only that, but Coach Ernie Willingham, he's like a legend in Collinsville. He steps away, but he comes back. And I think, him being around that program has helped them a lot this year. Faultville, they finished 6-4 and 4-2 in the region, and they've got a second-year coach in Seth Ward. This should be a very interesting matchup. Don't be surprised if Collinsville don't go on the road and pull this one out.
Yeah, and you got to feel for some of these Collinsville kids. Tough situation with their coach leaving late. You can understand why he left late to go back home, all that type of stuff. Yeah. But it does put the kids in a tough situation. They've responded the right way under Coach Ernie there, and he's just done such a great job.
Oh, yeah, he has.
I mean, he's such a great guy, and you can't help but pull for him. We're going to take a quick break here on Road to the Blue Map. When we return, myself, Bo Starkey, will start breaking down some of the matchups in the North region of the bracket. So stay tuned for more here on Average Joe Sports Talk. Welcome back in to Road to the Blue Map Playoff Edition. Playoffs are here, and Bo, we've been together now all year doing the Central Alabama Road to the Blue Map, and we talked about it each week that when the season gets going, it just flies by. And obviously this year has flown by, and here we are finding ourselves talking about the playoffs again and getting ready to see which teams are going to be heading down to Jordan-Hare Stadium and competing for a state championship this season.
You're absolutely right, and the funny thing about it is when you look across the state, there's been some surprises here, but also the creams rose to the top. The teams who normally are there are there. They may not be as dominant as they have been in the past, but there's not a lot of big surprises of somebody who just jumped out at us outside of Moody that just took the center stage, you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
No, 100% agree. And one of those teams, though, that is a surprise maybe to some that is playing in the 7A playoffs will be the Vestavia Rebels. We've talked with them all year, got to talk with Coach Robert Evans week after week with keeping up with Vestavia athletics. They're going to be traveling to Austin, but they've gotten to where he wanted. What he told us early in the summer was, we want to face Thompson twice. We want to face Hoover twice. And if we're doing that, that means that we're in the postseason. And obviously he's been able to get his team there. Going to have a tough task, though, going on the road to Austin.
They are going to have a tough task, but if you look across the field and you look at Austin, Austin's had a really good season. But when you look at Vestavia, you're looking at 42 seniors. Robert Evans came in and took over. He came in from that Chris Yeager tree. He was Chris Yeager's defensive coordinator last year. Vestavia 6-4, 4-3 in the toughest region arguably in America. And I mean that wholeheartedly. These guys are as advertised. I think they're poised not only to win this football game, but many more on down the road. When you have 42 seniors on your team, and you have a coaching staff that has Robert Evans as the head coach, and you have Hueytown's offensive coordinator calling plays for you from last year, an offense that averaged, 50 a game, that's a recipe for success, and I really think they're going to go in there and handle business with these guys. Honestly, I really do. And they're 4-0 all time versus Austin. The last meeting, they won 56-7.
Yeah, going to be interesting. Also, Coach Sean Rainey, the defensive coordinator there at Vestavia, he was the head coach at Spain Park last year. And so, when you combine all those minds right there at the top, makes it tough. And plus, I've been told by a lot of other coaches, Vestavia plays a pace very similar to what Tennessee plays on Saturdays. That's what they try to do offensively, and they've gotten a lot better at it as the year's gone on. Their quarterback's gotten healthy. It should really make for a really, really fun matchup.
And he got injured during this Thompson game originally.
Yeah, so looking at another matchup, speaking of Thompson, they're going to be hosting Huntsville. Look, there's no secret going into this game. Thompson is the favorite going into this one. Huntsville is a team that has, had a good year, but hasn't necessarily had the type of season that a Thompson, a Hoover, a Hewitt, even a Vestavia's had. They're going to really have their work cut out for them going on the road to Thompson here in round number 1.
Yeah, when you look at Thompson, you're looking at the 3-time defending 7A state champions, nationally ranked 2 years ago at number 2, with Mark Freeman, 7A Region 3, number 2 this year. They had the tough loss to Hoover. Everybody's seen what happened in that game. They've looked pedestrian at times this year. And when I say pedestrian, everybody's like, well, this is Thompson. What are you talking about? Here's what I'm talking about. It's a very modest, they've outscored their opponents very modestly, 269 to 135 this year. That's not very recent Thompson-esque domination.
Yeah.
So when you look at that right there, you say they look pedestrian. Now, here's the deal. Huntsville's got a good football team, and I think Huntsville could compete in this game, but the problem's going to be, do their players really think they can beat Thompson with the mystique, the 3 straight 7A state championships? I don't know. That is the biggest question that has to be answered. And again, it goes back to what you and I have said all year. Until one of these Huntsville teams dip down in here and beat one of these Birmingham teams, it's hard for me to believe that.
Yeah, no, definitely difficult to believe in all that. And then looking at some of the other classifications, let me go get my notes real quick.
All right.
So we're going to switch it now back down to 1A, lower classifications. And looking at the first game that we have here, you got Cedar Bluff going to be traveling to Meek there in round number 1. Tell us a little bit about this matchup, one of those 4-seed traveling to a 1-seed matchups there.
Yeah, so when you look at Meek, they're the Region 8, number 1 seed. Cedar Bluff's Region 7, number 4 seed. Meek on the year is 10-0, 7-0 in the region, coached by Houston Powell, who's a very good football coach. Obviously, he's got his team undefeated this year. But when you look across the field and you look at Cedar Bluff, you're looking at Alan Beckett, who's a veteran coach who's been there and done that at every classification there is. The one prior meeting was in 1990. Meek won 28-27. Means nothing in this game, but I tell you what does mean something in this game. Bucky Leak's supposed to be back and supposed to be healthy in this game. Also, Cedar Bluff beat Donahoe last week 34-0. So when you look across and you see, hey, we get Bucky Leak back, we got Cade Browning back. Cade Browning's the current Matt and Todd Player of the Week with 203 yards last week and 3 touchdowns. But when you look at the computers, guess what the computers say? Meek is a 40-point favorite. I'm telling you right now, I don't see that.
Yeah.
Meek's not 40 points better than Cedar Bluff personally, but I could be wrong.
Going to be a really interesting matchup with Cedar Bluff having to go all the way to Meek. That may be one of the things that is factoring into that score total there. You got Pickens County going to be hosting Wadley. This is a matchup of 2 teams who have recently been to the state championship game. Wadley played for the 1A state championship last year. Pickens County played for it the year before. Going to be a really fun matchup here in round number 1 with Wadley having to travel all the way from the east side of the state up past Tuscaloosa over towards Mississippi.
Yeah, that's a very long travel, and absolutely I agree with you. That can factor into these games. But what I will tell you about Pickens County has been really dominant, especially in the regular seasons as of late. This season's not as dominant as they have been in the past, but they're 7-3, 7-1 in region, coached by Coach Williams. Now Wadley, coming out of Region 6, they're the 3rd seed. Wadley this year not only beat Spring Garden, but shut them out 9-0. Think about that for a minute. They shut Spring Garden, who is ranked in the top 10, out 9-0. Not only beat them, but shut them out. Here's the deal about this, and we was at Wadley yesterday, and we went out and seen their facilities and seen some of their players. They're a really good football team, really dynamic, but they might be one of the youngest teams in the state. They graduated 13 seniors last year off that team who made the finals. And Mr. Lynch, Kavion Lynch, he had 238 yards, 4 touchdowns last week. He's the current Average Joe Sports Talk Teammate of the Week this week. He had an outstanding year. And then Mr. Wilkes, who's 6'4", 205 freshman. He's rushed for 1,558 yards on 202 carries. and has 75 tackles on defense and 5 sacks. Both of those guys are freshmen. Both of those guys are put in the spotlight because they don't have anybody else.
And I know Wilkes made a huge impact in the state championship last year. I mean, he was the talk.
In 8th grade.
Yeah, and then plus, I think it's either his dad or his uncle or one of them is the greatest player that's ever played in Wadley history. So,
well, he stood beside me yesterday. He's about 6'4" and weighs about 205, 210.
Yeah.
And he's 13, 14 years old.
He's every bit of the size, that's for sure. He's going to be a big-time prospect coming out of Wadley there. Here's one that people around here will be interested in. Valley Head going to be hosting Phillips Bear Creek. I know about Phillips from them winning the girls' state championship a couple years ago, but I do know that their football program is not very well known throughout the state. They're also going to have to make a long trip over to Valley Head. How do you view Valley Head? You got to see them last week in a big-time matchup on Thursday night. How about them now getting to go back home and get back in their classification and start trying to make a run here for the state championship?
I think losing last week is a blessing for Valley Head, and I'll tell you why. It takes the pressure off of you. When you're in an undefeated season, there's pressure that grows each and every week. Them losing last week before this playoff game to a team that's in a higher classification, one classification up, that's actually a blessing to me because it takes the pressure off of you heading into these playoffs. Valley Head has they've done everything everybody said they couldn't do this year. When this season started, everybody said Decatur Heritage is going to walk the dog in that region. Nobody's going to touch them. That ain't been the case. Valley Head went to Coosa Christian, who a lot of Coosa Christian guys are here right now, and won that game straight up when a lot of people doubted them, including a lot of us at Average Joe's, and they proved us wrong. But when you got a running back like Mr. Bain, good things happen. Yeah. I mean, when you look at his stats for the year, he's sitting at 2,500 yards and 36 touchdowns. And then you flip it over to Hunter Robinson. Hunter Robinson's at 1,300 yards and 21 touchdowns. So when you got two guys like that in the backfield who's producing like they are, and then they're very, very good, stingy defensively, they keep your offense on the sidelines watching the football game, which is what they want to do because they run the ball so well. And look, no disrespect for Phillips Bear Creek, but they got their hands full with this bunch.
Yeah, definitely going to have their hands full going to Valley Head on tomorrow night. Raglan going to be hosting Marion County, another long trip for one of those teams over from that side of the state to this side. And look, when you're at the lower, the 1A through 3A, really, maybe even into 4A, you're going to have to travel a little bit more, especially in these early rounds with how the regions match up. And that's what you get here, and you almost see the travel play more of an effect at the lower classifications. And you're going to see that here with Marion County making a long trip from northwest Alabama all the way over here to Raglan.
Here's the deal with this game right here. Raglan, coming into last week, had everything in front of them. The region championship, the number 1 seed and all that. They did not produce against Spring Garden. They lost kind of in a decent big fashion. And that's nothing to hold your head down about because Spring Garden is starting to peak. That's what Spring Garden does at this time of the year. Nothing to hold your head down. But now what they have to do, what I want to know is the grit and toughness of these Raglan kids. Can you bounce back after a loss like they had against Spring Garden? That's what's going to be what separates if they're going to win this game or not. I think they're going to win this game, obviously. Now, if you look at it, it's a 5-point line according to the computers. That's interesting. Raglan is 6-4, 5-1 in region this year. Marion County, 7-3, 6-2 in their region. Now, here is where I think these two separate. If Raglan can get their mindset back and they start playing like they did before they played Spring Garden, I think they're going to be fine. If they come in with a hangover, Marion County could come in here, and this one could get interesting in the fourth.
Speaking of Spring Garden, we'll talk about them now hosting South Lamar. Talk about that game a little bit, and for Spring Garden, how they now need to bounce back and not let the success of last week carry over into a negative way into this week.
Spring Garden played Coosa Christian earlier this year, and Coosa Christian was really physical with them. Beat them up a little bit physically. And they won the game 20-something to nothing. But I think that the toll on the game took them over because they turned around and played Wadley the next week and didn't score. They didn't look good. I think it's the physical game they went through. Since that time, they have turned back into Spring Garden. They've morphed back into Jason Howard teams. They're peaking at the right time. We're looking at a team heading into the playoffs who's been to the third round, the semis, and the third round. And if it wasn't for Mars Hill, they would probably have at least one blue map, if not two. Now, I say all that to say this. They're 9-1, 5-1 on the year. They're playing South Lamar, who has a good football team, I don't think on paper South Lamar is going to be able to stop this running game with Spring Garden. When you look at Spring Garden, they have multiple guys that run the ball. You're going to start up front with Chapel Pope, the quarterback. You're going to go to Cam Welch, John Welch, and then and Connor Bates. All four of those guys can take it to the house on you at any time. They're real big and strong up front and real physical. South Lamar is really going to be up against it trying to stop these guys.
You've been talking about Coosa Christian, and so we'll talk about their game now. Hackleburg going to be coming on the road to Coosa Christian. And looking at this matchup here between Hackleburg and Coosa Christian, you've talked about this Coosa Christian team. They're a physical group. Obviously, Coach O'Brien's done a really, really good job there with this team. How important is tomorrow night's game for Coosa Christian, for Coach O'Brien, and for his program and what he's trying to build there?
Coosa Christian, to me, is a real interesting story from the standpoint Mark O'Brien's been there 24 months. It feels like he's been there forever. He has not been there forever. He's been there 24 months. And what's happened in 24 months? They have an indoor practice facility that's turfed. They have new weight rooms. They have multiple changes of uniforms. I'm talking about 5 to 6. They have a new charter bus. They have a new mindset. He brought in Teddy Whitmire from 5, who had 3 state championships, went to Pinson Valley, won a 6th state championship. Another state championship with Pinson Valley. For them to host this game right here, and look, they lost to Valley Head by 2 points earlier this year at home to get the 2nd seed, not the 1st seed in this region. And I think that was a blessing to them because it woke them up. Because we went up to the Gatlinburg-Pittman game, a team that made it the 3rd round in 4A, I believe, in Tennessee, and they physically beat them to death. They was hauling guys off the field. I was at the game. It was crazy. And when they come back home, they started destroying people. I'm talking about not just beating people, beating them to death. So when we head into these playoffs, Hackleburg's going to be up against it a little bit. And a lot of local media outlets has picked Hackleburg, and that's been posterized in Coosa's locker room all week. So when you look at Coosa right here, one of the most underrated players in North Alabama is Cleet O'Brien, Coach O'Brien's son. He's sitting at 101 tackles, 18 of those for loss. 18 tackles for loss. 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 INTs on the year. He's only a sophomore. Listen to this. Drake Aubrey, 77 tackles, 19 of those tackles are for loss, 6 sacks, 2 punts blocked. He'll be back next year. All right. Dalton McGraw, Eli Moats, both sophomores, both have over 70 tackles on the year. They'll both be back next year. Jai Mostella is a senior, 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns. J.D. Justice, sophomore. J.D. Justice has 1,600 yards passing, 15 touchdowns on the year. X Factor, Jaden Burns, who is here tonight. Jaden Burns is an X Factor. Here's why. When you get around that 30-yard line, that's 3 points. And in the playoffs, all points matter. You get around a 30-yard line going in, you get 3 points on the board every single time. That's huge in the playoffs. So I'm telling you this to tell you that Hackleburg has a good football team. They're 6-4, 5-2, coached by Rod Hudson. But when he goes and plays this bunch tomorrow night, he's going to find out this is a sleeper in 1A North.
Looking at another 1 seed there in the North, Lynn going to be hosting Donahoe. Tell us about this matchup and what you know about this Lynn team as Donahoe goes to try to take them on to round number 1.
Yeah, Lynn's Region 5, number 1 seed. They're 9-1, 8-0 in the region, coached by Mark Hastings. Donahoe Falcons are 4-5, 3-3, and they're coached by Jeremy Satcher. Now, Coach Satcher took over for our good friend. I call him Big Mark. So Mark worked with me at Verizon. He's a great guy. He recently went over to Westbrook. He's there now, the offensive coordinator there. Been there many years. Played at Alabama. Great guy. Here's the deal with this. Lynn has outscored their opponents 383 to 146 on the year. Their only loss was the ACA, which we've talked about multiple times this year.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people lose to that.
And ACA is also 3 classifications higher.
3 classifications higher. Now, they're 3-0 all time versus Donahoe. Donahoe, to me, is one of those teams that are really getting the juice out of their players they got. And this is no shot at Donahoe. They're a 1A private school that just don't have a lot of guys that play football right now. They just don't. They're really good in volleyball. We've seen that. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, this ain't volleyball. This is football. They just don't have the guys out there. And they've been trying to do it for years. Mark Sanders really put his heart and soul into that. And Coach Thatcher was a good friend of Mark Sanders. So when he took over, the players was familiar with him. I just don't know if they got the guys to win this football game.
Yeah, going to be a tough one there for Donahoe to go to, Lynn. Last matchup in 1A, Addison going to be hosting Appalachian. Tell us about this matchup here. Really, really tight matchup, I think, between these two programs.
Addison, the number 2 seed out of Region 8. Appalachian is the number 3 seed out of Region 7. Addison is 8-2, 6-1 on the year, coached by David Smothers. Appalachian is 5-5, 4-2, coached by Neil Willington. Now, here's the funny thing about Appalachian. You rewind the clock three weeks ago, they're undefeated in the region, about to play Valley Head with a shot not only to beat Valley Head, but to win the region overall. Mm-hmm. So they lose that Valley Head game in a very close one. Then they go to Coosa Christian, they get destroyed. Coosa beat them 40-something, like, because this is they caught Coosa at the wrong time. So then, here's my deal. Appalachian is catching 30. The state computer says that Addison's a 30-point favorite in this game. I don't see that. Appalachian's a good football team.
Yeah.
I just don't see that. Now, we watched Addison win the volleyball championship the other day, and great fan base. They were really there, really nice people, really good people. Appalachian, same thing, great fan base. We've seen them come to Coosa. This is going to be a really good football game, and for them to say it's a 30-point game, I just don't see that. But now Addison is 3-0 all time versus this team. In the last meeting, they won 48-0 in 2013. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, that's 10 years ago too. So but should be a really fun matchup, and that will wrap things up for 1A. So going to take another break here. When we come back, myself, Reggie Davis, will start getting into 3A and 6A games and talking about those matchups here in the North, right here on Average Joe Sports Talk. Welcome back in to Road to the Blue Map. First round of the playoffs is upon us tomorrow night. Teams will be strapping it up, and there'll be 16 less teams in every single classification, Reggie. And next classification, we're going to be talking about 3A. We'll get right into it. Vinemont going to be heading to Mars Hill. We've seen Mars Hill a lot in the 1A state championship, 2A state championship. Now they've moved up in classification, and they're trying to go and compete for a 3A state championship.
Actually, we got a little correction there. Danville is on the way to Mars Hill this week.
Okay.
Danville finished number 4th. They were the 4th seed out of Region 7, and which again that was a very tough region with the likes of J.B. Penton and Madison Academy for Danville. Now Danville's got a very pretty strong coach in Andrew Williams. He's in his 2nd year at Danville, and he's getting those guys turned around up there. And like I said, they got into the playoffs despite the 3-7 record. But as long as you win the region games that you're supposed to win, that overall record does not matter. Now this is a new season. Everybody goes in 0-0. So and Mars Hill, everybody knows how great they are. Daryl Higgins has been there for 7 years. He has built a phenomenal program up there. They've got great facilities, great fan base, and whatnot. So those guys are just rolling. And what's crazy with Mars Hill, they're not afraid to play the 6As. They're not afraid to play the 5As. Their only loss in the year was about 3 points to Coleman, which is a 6A playoff team. So that just tells you the type of athletes they have at Mars Hill. They can compete with those larger classifications. So and this is a first time matchup for these guys with these two teams. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one.
Geraldine going to be going to Winfield. We saw Winfield compete for a state championship in basketball this past year, and now turning around on the football field, going to be hosting Geraldine, who has to make a pretty long drive over there to Winfield for this game.
Oh, yeah. Now, this is a Geraldine team. They have been through all kinds of adversity this season. They've had injuries. They've just had all kinds of things happen. But they killed Coach Davis, Michael Davis. He's in the 2nd year at Geraldine. He's a Geraldine graduate. But he's kept that team together. They were able to finish 3rd in a very tough 3A Region 6 with Piedmont, Sylvania, and those teams like that. And they held it together and won the games they need to win. And they go on the road to face a very good Winfield team. And this is a team I've heard mentioned in the state championship talk for 3A. Winfield's been very good the last few years. They've got David McKinney over there as coach. He's been there 10 years. These two teams last met in 2015, and that was in the first round of the playoffs, and Winfield won that game 34-7. And what's another interesting fact about this, Winfield, their only loss is to Gordo this season, and that was a 49-42 shootout type game. And Gordo is a very, very good team. They won that region, so this should be a very good matchup in the first round. I mean, this is that 2 and 3 matchup that we talked about earlier.
Phil Campbell going to Madison Academy. Madison Academy, when they're in 3A, they just roll, and
Oh, yeah.
They're one of those teams that they've found kind of a fit, and they're a smaller school up there in the Huntsville area.
Yeah.
Due to winning, they kind of gotten moved up over the years, but their home is at 3A, and when they're at 3A, they're as good as anybody.
You're exactly right. I know there was some mix-ups with them with the classifications this year. They were originally put in 4A, but I think they miscalculated some numbers, and they moved down to 3A. There were some people not happy about them moving down to 3A, but they've been rolling this season. They, Madison Academy, they're going to play their brand of football, and they've got a veteran coach in Bob Godsey. He's in his 4th year at Madison Academy, but if you know Bob, he was at Hartselle for several years, won a state championship at Hartselle, and he made several deep playoff runs at Hartselle. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's a very good coach. Madison Academy, they've won 3 straight region titles over the last 3 years. And then you flip over, you got Phil Campbell, very strong program. Year in and year out, they compete very well at 3A. They were the 4th seed coming out of Region 8. And Kevin Barnwell is in his 5th year at Phil Campbell. So, and this is the first meeting between these two guys.
Sylvania going to be hosting Fayette County. Fayette County is one of those teams that's always there year after year, but going to have their hands full going to Sylvania.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. Fayette County, I remember back in the days when Coach Tucker was there, Walden Tucker, he was there. Those guys were very, very tough to play. They were in the 5A playoffs every year, and you just couldn't count them out. They were there, and no matter who the coach is, they are still going to be Fayette County. You cannot take them lightly. They're on the road again. This is one of those two seed, 3 seed matchups that can go either way. And Sylvania, again, one of those things they have been through it this year a little bit, but they still held it together with Coach Van up there. They finished second in that tough 3A Region 6 with Piedmont and Geraldine and AHSAA. So very interesting matchup between these two programs. Can't wait to see how this one turns out.
Oatman going to be traveling to Piedmont. Piedmont looking to repeat as state champions. So this will be a good one to get started with and really build some momentum now here in the postseason.
Now, I agree. This time of the year is Piedmont season. Yeah. It's like Steve Smith gets those guys dialed in and ready to go. This is their go time. They're ready to go. And when you got a player like Jack Hayes leading your team, I mean, what more can you say? The guy has broke. I don't know how many state records he's broken this year, but
not just in football. Either.
No, not just in football. I mean, he's a heck of a baseball player as well, and basketball. Come to think of it, so I mean, he's an all-around great athlete. And having someone like that on your team, leading your team at the quarterback position, that will give you a strong chance to win state titles, and that's what they've done. And but you have a very good Oatman team coming in with Coach Ryan Hall. We got to meet Coach Hall over the years, and he's working to build a program over there. He's visited Steve Smith at Piedmont. He's visited Coach Benefield at Fife because he wants to see what they're doing, why they're winning year in and year out, and he wants to put that in the Oatman program. And those guys, they finished the season 3-7, but again, they won the region games they needed to win to get into the playoffs, and they're going to be a tough team. They're not going to go out and just roll over and just lay down for Piedmont. They're going to go out there and play them tough. And this is going to be a very good matchup between these two teams. And actually, the last time they met each other was in 2015. Piedmont won that game. And another interesting thing about Piedmont before we move on, their 2 losses this year was to Cherokee County and Anniston. Those 2 teams won their respective regions in the higher classification. So, and they lost those 2 games by combined 9 points. So that tells you how strong this Piedmont team is this year.
JB Pennington going to be hosting Colbert County. You know a lot about this JB Pennington team. For them, Coach Cassidy left, took off for Chelsea, but they just continued rolling. He built a really good program at JB Pennington, and I think this year's results kind of show you what he was capable of doing there and what he's capable of doing at Chelsea now as well.
Yeah, I agree, man. I met Coach Cassidy last season. We talked some, and he invited me up, and I went up and spent some time with him. He's a great coach, and the assistant coaches up there are great guys. All the kids up there are great guys. Everybody in Blunts were just very good people. And I've been up a few times this season and hung out with those guys. And what Coach Caleb Miles has done, he has taken what Coach Cassidy done and he's built on it, and he's kind of put his own spin on it, and the kids love him. They love what he's doing with the program. And these guys have had a very some of a record-breaking season. They went 9-1. This is the first time they've won 9 games in the season, I think, since 1992 or something like that. And their only loss this year was to Madison Academy, and that was a region game. But in Colbert County, again, one of those teams, Alabama high school football, Colbert County is they're in it every year. No matter who the coach is, they're going to be in it every year. You can't count these guys out. That's my hometown. So, you got Scotty Hanna up there in his first year, and it seems he's got those guys rolling again. So, I can't wait to see how this matchup turns out.
AHSAA going to Gordo. For Gordo, I think that you would have rather played any other 4 seed than having AHSAA come up there.
Yeah, we talked about this off camera some. I've talked to my man Landon Key over there. He played at AHSAA. And right now, I would not want to play AHSAA. Yeah. AHSAA got hot at the end of the season, and they won 3 games, and those 3 games got them into the playoffs. And it was just so weird how that worked out. But AHSAA is a very dangerous team, and going on the road to Gordo, if I'm Gordo, I don't want to play the Indians right now. You got Coach Chris Finley in his first year taking over the program. Something clicked in the middle of the season with those guys. So. This is going to be a very interesting matchup, and this is going to be one of those 1 versus 4 seeds that we want to keep our eye on to see if AHSAA pulls off the upset.
Yeah, could also be one where travel does play a big factor as well. It's going to be a long trip for AHSAA going to Gordo. Lauderdale County going to be hosting Susan Moore. Tell us a little bit about that matchup.
I've got Vinemont
Okay,
down on
Vinemont.
that. Yeah, I've got Vinemont down on that
The
one.
graphic that, or the bracket that I printed out was obviously wrong. So Vinemont going to be traveling to Lauderdale County.
Right, and I got to see the Vinemont play earlier this season when they played JB Penton. They've got some athletes at Vinemont. They finished 5-5 and 3-3 in that region. Stephen Robinson, he's in his 6th year at Vinemont. They've got some athletes. They can run the ball very well, and if you let them get out in space, they can hurt you. And I saw a lot of that against JB Penton. In Lauderdale County, again, it's the area I'm from. They are one of those teams. They're always in it in 3A, no matter who the coach is. Whether they're in it every year. And Jeff Mason's been there 7 years, and so this should be a very interesting matchup, 2 and 3 matchup as well.
Going to shift things now over to 6A, talk about some of the higher classification games and a team that you're very, very familiar with here to get things started, and going to have their hands full with a really good 4 seed coming here to Gadsden. Gadsden City going to be hosting Coleman. Coleman, a team that is going to line up. They're going to pound the football. They're going to run it, and we're going to see if Gadsden City physically can line up and take on that and go and do what a 1 seed is supposed to do to a 4 seed. And I think when you look at this Gadsden City season, they've beaten the teams that they're supposed to beat. And, I think the win over Calera a couple weeks ago may be something that really sparks this team now going into this postseason.
And, it's funny that you say that. Coach Smith and I talked about this yesterday on his coach's show about that Calera game. To me, when I listened to a little bit of that game that night on the radio, and it seemed like a playoff-type road game for Gadsden City. And Coach Smith himself said, that was a great game between 2 great teams, 2 6A playoff teams. And he said that did give us that road game playoff-type feel. And he said that was good for our guys to face that adversity. He said we had some things go good, some things go bad, but we needed that game going into the bye week and going into the playoffs. And like you said, Coleman's one of those teams. They're going to line up, they're going to hit you, they're going to run the ball. But I'm going to tell you something about that Gadsden City defense. You try to run the ball against them, it's like running into a brick wall. So you're going to have guys like Jackson Veazey and Elijah Dunn. They're going to make it hard for them to run the ball. So this is going to be a very good matchup. I'm excited. I know the Gadsden City student body is excited. The city of Gadsden is excited because Gadsden City is one of those teams that was in the playoffs every year until about 6 years ago. So it's good to have the Titans back in the playoffs, and I'm looking forward to it.
Probably the biggest matchup in the whole entire state right here. Pinson Valley going to Mountain Brook. This is a big-time matchup, and it's one that, Pinson Valley has shown some promise this year with how they competed against Clay Chalkville. I think that the game with Centerpoint was a surprise to a lot of people.
Yeah.
They beat a really good Homewood team as well in the non-conference or in the non-region.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really fun matchup. And for Mountain Brook, this is the punishment for not beating Gardendale, for losing by 1, for not winning the region. Now you have to match up with Pinson Valley, which is going to be a really, really tough matchup.
Oh, yeah. And, these 2 teams got some history, in the playoffs. Last year, Mountain Brook beat Pinson in the playoffs. I think it was the quarterfinals, and Mountain Brook walked all over them 30-0. And if I'm Pinson Valley, I'm thinking about that. That game's in the back of my head. I'm going to come in, go to Mountain Brook, and like, you know what? You guys embarrassed us last year in the quarterfinals, so it's time for some get back. And Mountain Brook, and my thing with those guys is that Gardendale loss still in their head, But, Chris Yeager's been there for 17 years. I'm sure he has told his guys, hey, forget about it. This is a new season. Let's move on. Gardendale's in the past, so we're not going to worry about that right now. And Lee Gass is in his first year at Pinson Valley, but he's been on the staff there for the last 5 or 6 years. So he's very familiar with the program. He's very familiar with the players. He knows what they're capable of. So this is going to be a very good matchup. And like you said, I think it's one of the biggest games in the state Friday night. I'm definitely going to be watching this one for several reasons, because the winner has to play the winner of the Gadsden City Coleman game.
Hartsville going to be hosting Buckhorn. Look, we saw Buckhorn get beat by Helena 55-17 earlier in the year. They've struggled with some of the better teams they've played, and this is a Hartsville team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on in 6A.
I've had a chance to see both of these teams play, and that's why I kind of wanted to break down the 6A bracket, because I've seen several of these teams in the north Hartselle is a very good team. Their quarterback.
And they're huge.
They're huge. They are huge. That quarterback,
they're
man.
like 6'5", 300 across the offensive line.
Oh yeah. And that's one thing when they came into Gadsden, I looked across, I was like, these guys are huge, you know. But and look, they're as good as advertised. That 10-0 record, it's legit.
Yeah, and
they're
it includes a win over Muscle Shoals.
It does. Because that region they're in is a very tough region. Because, I mean, it was a three-way battle between Hartselle, Muscle Shoals, and Decatur. Because I didn't know who was going to come out of that one. I said, Hartselle might, but you never know. And the fact they survived that region undefeated, and that tells you how great of a team they are. And Coach Brian Moore, I mean, can't say enough about him. He's a great coach. He coached at Jasper/Walker for several years and had a lot of success there. And he's brought that over to Hartselle. Buckhorn, another team I've had a chance to watch this year. Coach Matt Patterson, he's in his second year. He's building a program over there. I've talked to him some during the season, and he's wanting us to come up and cover him. And I'm going to go up and interview him soon. But they've got some athletes at Buckhorn. You can tell they're right there, about to turn the corner and become a legitimate playoff team year in and year out. He's doing a great job up there with those guys. So this is going to be an interesting matchup, with this one as well.
Well, you want to talk about athletes being out on the field. This next matchup we have is going to have some athletes out on the field. There's no doubt about that. Centerpoint going to be hosting Jackson Olin. Jackson Olin's a weird team because we've seen. Well, I mean they are. I mean I don't mean it disrespectfully, but they're a weird team. We went and saw them get blown out by Mountain Brook.
Yeah.
But we've also seen them go and beat Pelham on the road. And I mean, they went and competed with Helena and got beaten overtime. I mean, they're a weird group that
kind of Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, and at times they play really well. At times they don't play well. Yeah. But if Centerpoint lets them hang around, they're good enough defensively that they can get some things going on offense, and the upset could happen here.
Oh yeah, but you got to look at Centerpoint and Coach Bates. He's been there for 5 years, and we've been following these guys.
Built a program.
Exactly. We've watched them since we started Average Joe's, and we've watched them get better and better and better every year. And Troy Bruce and Jabari Collier were two guys that he talked to us about 2 years ago. He said, these two guys are going to be dogs. Y'all keep your eye on them. And they have definitely done a great job leading that Centerpoint offense, averaging 38 points a game. I mean, he has truly, I can't say enough about Coach Bates. I love the guy. I love going down and talking to him because he tells you how it is. He don't sugarcoat anything, and that's the way he is with his players. But this series with Jackson Olin, J.O. leads all time 5-0. And the last time they actually played each other was in 2001 when Centerpoint was still Irvin. So this is going to be a very interesting matchup. When I was working, writing up my notes, I was like, this could be a very good game.
Yeah.
A very good 2 versus 3 matchup. Like I said, can't look at J.O.'s record. They're 4-6, but like you said, they've been Jekyll and Hyde all season. So I can't wait to see how this one turns out.
Clay Chalkville going to be hosting Parker. Not an easy matchup for Clay Chalkville in round number 1, especially if Khalifa Keith is going into this game healthy for Parker.
Exactly. I was when I looked at Parker's record, I was like, something's going on. And then I found out Khalifa Keith has not been healthy. I watched him last year when they played Alexandria in the playoffs, and he's a very special player. Parker, again, this is another game with athletes. Parker's got dudes all over the field. Coach Frank Warren, he's in his 3rd year at Parker, and we've talked to him some, got to meet him. And he's building a program down there. And then, look at Clay Chalkville, defending 6A champs. Coach Drew Gilmer, he's in his 6th year leading that program. Clay Chalkville's always had a very strong team, and he's just taken what they've had and built on it. And they have, won another state championship. Their only loss this season is to 7A Thompson, and that was by 3 points. So, and that tells you how good of a team Clay is, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're only giving up 8 points a game on defense, and if I'm not mistaken, they're leading 6A.
Yeah, and I think that's what could make it very tough, I think, on this Parker team, is the fact they don't throw it very well.
No.
And so Clay Chalkville's going to be able to just kind of crowd the box
Yep.
and really get after him. So.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at another one here. Muscle Shoals hosting Hazel Green. We talked about that region of Muscle Shoals, Decatur, and then Hartsville's at the top right there. Muscle Shoals gets the 2 seed. They're going to be hosting Hazel Green. For them, I think it's a favorable matchup for Muscle Shoals right here.
Oh yeah, Hazel Green's another one of those programs in the Huntsville area that they're building a program. People around the state say, Huntsville's known for basketball. That's basketball central. But they're getting on track on the football side. Charlie Wilburn took over the Hazel Green program this year, and they are not a bad team. I listened to some of that game when they played Gadsden City on the radio when I was traveling between 2 games somewhere, and they can make some plays. They can throw the ball very well. They've got a quarterback that can sling the ball. They got some receivers that can catch it. This should be a very good matchup. And you got Muscle Shoals with Coach Scott Basden. He's in his 15th year at Muscle Shoals. Coach Basden has been coaching for a while. He coached at Cordova before he came to Muscle Shoals, and actually won a state championship at Cordova. So he knows what he's doing. He knows how to put a championship type team on the field. And Muscle Shoals could be one of those teams to look out for in 6A North.
Oxford going to be going to Gardendale, another one of those that you could peg as maybe one of the biggest matchups in the state. Oxford's one of those sleeper teams as a 4 seed, and for Gardendale, how do they bounce back now after beating, you build up to go beat someone so bad. I think we saw it with Hoover last year.
Yeah.
Everything was about beating Thompson. Well, then they beat him in the regular season, and it was like, well, hey, now you got to go play the postseason, And so I think for Gardendale, that's what's going to be interesting to watch for them. Can they bounce back emotionally? And for Oxford, they're getting an Oxford team that's done nothing but get better and better and better.
Yeah, you're right. And, I don't think Oxford has peaked yet. I don't think they played their best game yet. And could it come this week against Gardendale? Coach Sam Adams, he's in year 2 at Oxford. They've got a lot of great things going on, building facilities and whatnot, making upgrades to the things they have down in Oxford. And I think Coach Adams is going to have his guys ready to go to Gardendale, because this is another 1 versus 4 matchup that the 4 seed could end up winning this game. So, in Gardendale, I watched those guys play Hueytown last week on TV, and I think that some of that Mountain Brook win was still, they were still feeling themselves a little bit. So, Coach Chad Eads, we've talked to him some. He's in year 5 at Gardendale. I'm sure he's going to have those guys dialed in and focused, because Oxford is, like I said, Oxford has not played their best game yet. They have not peaked. So this is going to be an interesting 1 versus 4 matchup.
Fort Payne hosting Decatur, maybe the toughest 2-3 matchup that Fort Payne could ask for, having to host Decatur here in round number 1.
Yeah, Fort Payne, I didn't get to see them play this year, but I've heard they've got some big guys up there on the line, and they can run the ball pretty well at times. Chris Elmore has been there 5 years, and his dad coached at Fort Payne for a while, and so the Elmore name and Fort Payne's been around for a while. And these guys are consistently in the playoffs. They're a consistently good team. You can't count them out at all, because they're going to be in the playoffs every year. And Decatur, Coach Jerry Adcock has been there 27 years, and for the last few years, Decatur has not been your typical Decatur type team. And this year they kind of came out the gates, fired on all cylinders. I was like, whoa, what is going on at Decatur? They lost 2 games to Muscle Shoals and to Hartsville, but Decatur's a very good team, and that's another team you've got to watch out for in 6A North.
That'll do it, Reggie. Enjoyed breaking down these games with you and talking about all the different classifications and everything going on. It's going to be really, really fun, I think, to look at 2A, 3A, 6A. Those are the classifications we were talking about that are wide open. So, going to be a lot of fun to see how all this plays out. You look at, to me, the 6A bracket's the most fun. I think it's the most competitive. I was looking at some of the South matchups. You got Benjamin Russell and Hueytown on there. You got Pike Road and Spanish Fort, Homewood McAdory, Saraland and Wetumpka, Calera going all the way to Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. And Hillcrest Tuscaloosa's without their quarterback. And so 6A has a chance to really, really play out to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes.
I can't wait, man. This is my favorite time of the year.
Yeah, and looking forward to seeing how Gadsden City does against Coleman as well. It's a big, big game here in Gadsden.
It is a big game. We don't do predictions, but if we did, well, I'm not going to say that. Coach Smith might not be happy with me. We may have some
predictions, though, coming up a little bit later.
So. Coach Smith may not be happy with me if I say that. So
that's going to do it for us here. We will take a break. When we come back, myself and Bo Starkey will start breaking down some of the other matchups that we have going on right here on Average Joe Sports Talk. Welcome back in here, Average Joe Sports Talk, Road to the Blue Map. I want to thank AHSAA and Buffalo Wild Wings for their sponsorship, allowing us to be here. And Bo, we'll get right into it.
Let's do it.
Central Florence going to be traveling to Priceville in round number 1. And is that the right matchup?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, cool. So Central Florida traveling to Priceville in round number 1. Tell us a little bit about these two teams.
Priceville 10-0, 7-0 in the region this year, coached by Chris Forrester. They're going to be a tough out. There's not a lot to talk about this game right here. I will tell you this, and you can take this for what it's worth. Priceville has scored 427 points and only given up 165 on the year. The last meeting, Priceville won 41-20, and that was in 2021, which was last year, so I don't see a lot changing in that game. No time to spend a lot on those two.
Aniana going to Haleyville. This is a really big matchup in 4A here.
Weird line on this one. Aniana is a -1 in this game. Aniana made it all the way to the state championship last year. They're coached by Phil Phillips, who is one of the best coaches in the state of Alabama. They're 8-1, 5-1 in the region this year, and you're thinking, why are they a 3 seed? Here's why they're a 3 seed. They had a 3-way tie with Cherokee County, but they only played 9 games. So the 3-way tie went to Cherokee County, then the head-to-head went to Etowah, which pushed them to the 3 seed. Now, that is not good for Haleyville because you're facing the defending North State champion in 4A and Fluff Bothwell, who had 473 yards total offense last week. State runner-up last year, and let me tell you this right now, they are poised to make another deep run. Phil Phillips, again, is one of the best coaches in 4A North, so that's pretty much all I got to say about that one. That may be a strange line right there, but Aniana's not used to being on the road in the first round either.
Madison County going to be going to Deschler, and we always see Deschler there year after year at 4A.
Deschler 10-0, 7-0 in the region by Coach Malone, Post Malone that is, I'm just kidding. Deschler is one of those teams that we've heard all year. Everybody said the winner of Etowah, Cherokee County, and Aniana is going to represent the North. Deschler is the one team everybody across the board says, we got something to say about that, and for good reason, because they've outscored their opponents 416 to 190 on the year. Now, they beat Madison Academy, they beat Colbert County, and they beat West Morgan, which means they're battle tested. They're ready for these playoffs. This team is going to be a very, very tough out in the 4A North.
Yeah, definitely, and they'll be matching up with the winner of Etowah and Northside. You've talked about this Etowah team. Tell me a little bit about this matchup here that they have with Northside.
I'm going to tread lightly when I say what I'm about to say. Etowah is 7-3, 5-1 on the year. They're coached by Matt Glover, who was the 6A Assistant Coach of the Year and also won the state championship at Clay Chalkville last year. This is a very, very difficult matchup for the Etowah Blue Devils because they've had trouble all year stopping a downhill running team. All Northside does is run downhill. They run the ugly Eagle offense, which is Fife's offense. Here's my question, and I think I know the answer. I'm from Attala. Attala is one of the most greedy cities in the state of Alabama. A lot of tough kids that have a lot of pride. They play for their city. Etowah has to win first downs. They have to win first downs. Northside don't like playing behind the chains. Etowah has to make them play behind the chains. With that being said, who wins the battle of first downs is going to win this game. Trace has got to play really good football, not turn it over. They got Bodie Bennett back. They got Briggs Freeman back. I look to see Andrew Pierce play some running back this year. First down's the key in that game. I really want to know who wins the first down matchup when Etowah's defense is on the field.
Cherokee County going to be hosting Corner. Really favorable matchup, I think, for Cherokee County here.
Very much so. Cherokee County has proved everybody wrong. Everybody cast them out when they lost to Aniana, and then Etowah blew out Aniana, and everybody said Cherokee County's going to finish third in the region. Wrong again. They won the region. Jacob Kelly's doing an outstanding job. They're 8-2, 5-1 on the year. Their only losses was to Aniana and a very tough 6A team, Fort Payne on the road. Jacob Cornejo is going to be the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour. Kid Lightning, Mr. Amos is another threat for them. But I want to talk about somebody else. I want to talk about Coach Brad Weaver and what his offensive line does, because without Brad Weaver and his offensive line, they couldn't do all the things they do offensively. And they've really stood out this year, and I want to highlight him and his unit this year because they need some of the credit.
West Morgan going to be hosting Westminster Christian. Tell us about these two teams.
2-3 matchup from Region 7 and Region 8. West Morgan Rebels are 9-1, 6-1 on the year. They are a 24-point favorite in this game, coached by Drew Phillips. Westminster Christian, very good basketball team, and coached by Coach LeBlanc. West Morgan is scored 445 points this year and only give up 1-6. Westminster has scored 465 points. Here's the difference in the game. They've given up 383 points. So that means they're giving up 38 points a game. West Morgan's giving up 10 points a game. There's your difference in that ball game.
Dora going to be hosting Good Hope. Really favorable matchup here for Dora.
Dora 7-3, 6-1, coached by Coach Williams. No stranger to this. The Dora Bulldogs. Anytime you go to their place, they bark at you when you come out. The Good Hope Raiders are 5-5, 3-3 on the year. Think about that. They look kind of pedestrian. They're kind of middle tier with their record. And unless they can play out of their minds, I don't look for them to compete with Dora in this football game.
Randolph School going to be hosting Rogers, and interesting 2-3 matchup here between these two.
Interesting because it's 8-2 versus 6-1, but then you look across the field and Rogers is 7-3, 4-3. Coached by Daniel Garrett, who is at Collinsville. Everybody on Average Joe's is very familiar with him. Coach Garrett did a really good job at Collinsville, had to leave after 1 year, got called back home. This is going to be a very tough matchup because for them to go up there and beat them is going to be a tall task for Coach Garrett in his second year there at Rogers.
Russellville going to be hosting Boaz in the 5A playoffs here, and Russellville, just beautiful place up there. Great athletes all the time. They're dominant in baseball, and going to be a tough task for Boaz to go to Russellville in round number 1.
It is, and I love Jeremy Sullivan. He's a really good football coach. Here's the problem. Russellville is 6-0 in the region, and they're 6-4 overall. They lost every non-region game this year, which is interesting because they played 7A Grissom, Deschler, Mars Hill, and Athens.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, but they lost all those. Now, interesting fact for Boaz, they won 3 straight heading into these playoffs, including a 51-16 over Sardis and a 37-0 over Douglas. Sorry, Mr. Fontaine, he's here watching, but they did win them, and they beat Lee of Huntsville 21-20, which is a big win for them, even though it's a lot higher classification.
Pleasant Grove going to be hosting Alexandria. This is a big matchup. We've seen Alexandria match up with Pleasant Grove, with Parker a lot over the last couple of years. And what we've noticed, obviously, is there's a little bit of an athlete discretion between the two. Is that probably going to be the biggest factor in this ball game here?
It definitely could be, and I think it probably will be, unfortunately, for Alexandria. Pleasant Grove's 8-1, 6-1 on the year, coached by Darryl LeBeau. Alexandria is 5-4, 4-2, coached by Todd Ginn, one of our favorite coaches in the state. Unfortunately, Todd Ginn graduated a whole lot of guys last year, including Javez McGee and others. The only thing that really stands out for me is this. They're on the road, heading up to Pleasant Grove. That's another task.
Yeah.
2 years ago,
they've been at home the last 2, yeah.
Yep, and then last year they hosted Parker. Mm-hmm. And very hard-fought game and lost with all their guys. So this is a task for them to go on the road and beat this Pleasant Grove team who only has 1 loss to Ramsey all year.
ARAB going to be hosting East Limestone. Very favorable matchup for ARAB here.
Yeah, because Lee Osmond, he's 9-1. He's 6-0 in the region this year. East Limestone is 5-5, 3-3. When you go play a Lee Osmond team, you better buckle your chin strap. You better get ready to hit somebody because they're going to hit you. Another gritty performance by his team this year. They're going to have to meet a team with a lot of athletes that executes good to beat them because when they run into matchups like this is a tall task for somebody to beat an ARAB team.
Really interesting matchup here to me. Moody going to be hosting Jasper, but you're getting a Jasper team who has done nothing but just be hot as crap after starting the season 0-3. They've won every game but 1, which was a loss to Pleasant Grove since then. They're playing good football. We know Jasper has athletes. And for Moody, this is unfamiliar territory, being a host team in the playoffs and kind of having some pressure and expectations around that program right now.
You hit the nail on the head, and what's going to be the difference in this game is how they handle those pressures, because this is uncharted territory for Moody, not for Jake Gaines. He's been at Thompson and won the last 3 states, but for Moody itself as a program, definitely uncharted territory. They're not used to this. Now, these may be probably the second best athletes they faced all year. I think that's safe to say. I think they have more athletes than anybody outside of Leeds, and so that can make it interesting. But what is not going to be interesting is the play of Davion Dozier. Can Jasper defend him? And if they do defend him, can they stop Blaine Burke, who has 1,300 yards, 21 touchdowns rushing, and then quarterback Cole McCartney, who has 2,482 yards, 34 touchdowns to only 3 picks and takes care of the football. Moody is a 17-point favorite.
Leeds going to be hosting Fairfield. Not much to talk about with this matchup. Leeds favored by a long shot here.
They're favored by 18. They're 9-0, 6-0. Chose not to play against Center Point. I don't know how that works. I don't care how it works. I have respect for Jerry Hood, who is their coach. I have respect for Center Point's coach as well, Coach Bates. So it's not me to judge. But I will tell you this. I'll tell you what I will judge. Leeds only gives up 9 points a game.
Yeah.
And until somebody goes out there and scores a lot of points on Leeds, I don't see that happening. With this game right here, if Leeds goes in there and plays Leeds football, they're going to win this football game.
Yeah, it should be a dominant matchup here for Leeds. Scottsboro going to be hosting Brewer. Tell us about these two teams. I honestly don't know a ton about Brewer.
Chris Bell, it is what it is. We met him at Media Days. Scottsboro's a different team. They lost to Fife last year, 45-7. He didn't shy away from that at Media Days. He told us we're a better football team. We learned from that. We grew from that. When you have losses like that, the lower classification, it humbles you. He started with that and then built a program that we know today. They're 6-4, 5-1 in their region. They're playing really good football right now. This is a very tough matchup for Brewer.
Ramsey going to be hosting Southside of Gadsden. Southside of Gadsden's had a good season, but it's like I was telling you off camera. They're one of those teams that they've beaten the teams that they're supposed to beat, and then they've kind of lost to the teams that were supposed to beat them. And this is one of those games where Ramsey is supposed to probably beat the Southside Gadsden team. They're going to have their hands full going to Birmingham tomorrow night.
To give you an idea of what kind of athletes we're going to look at, they beat Pleasant Grove.
Yeah.
I mean, they beat them straight up.
And they beat Hueytown.
They beat Hueytown. That's exactly right. They're 8-2, 7-0 in the region.
And went down and played Auburn really, really well. They were 42-21
That's
down
exactly
there.
right.
Yeah.
And that's a very tough Auburn team and went down there to play them. 7A Auburn, who is the highest scoring team in 7A. Love Southside Gadsden, love Miles Holcomb, love Justin Bowen, love all their kids. You're going to have Gage Neesmith play his game of his life. You're going to have Mason Teague do what he does. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of, we don't have any volume, but we still do here. There's a lot of things got to happen right for Southside to win that game.
Yeah, going to have to be a lot of things that happen right. Try to plug it back in, Josh. I think we got unplugged out here from one of the outlets that we had everything plugged into, so that's why you saw the lights kind of changing here and everything. But still live on Facebook and now getting things back up and going. Got to thank Josh Abercrombie for getting everything going for us here with Average Joe Sports Talk. But, yeah, that is it outside of Guntersville going to Fairview. Talk a little bit about Guntersville and Fairview in that matchup there.
Guntersville and Fairview is an interesting game. Guntersville had some injuries, big injuries, and if nobody knows that, I'm not going to say who got injured, but it was a very big injury. Guntersville, check this out, has outscored their opponents 41-10 in games this year. Now, they've had a very key injury, and I think Fairview's watched game film right now, and they know who that injury is. But with that saying all time, Guntersville is 19-3 all time versus this squad, and I don't look for that to change because their defense is that salty. The injury was not on their defense, so that defense is still only giving up 10 points a game, and Fairview has lost 2 straight heading into these playoffs. You don't want to be backing into them, especially when you're playing a defense that only gives up 10 points a game.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to take a quick break. We come back.
Oh, gosh.
We will have Josh's picks right
We
here
are picking games
on Average
for the
Joe
first
Sports
time
Talk.
in 4 years with Josh Abercrombie. You do not want to miss this. 1 game per classification.
Welcome back in here on Average Joe Sports Talk. Road to the Blue Map, first round of the playoffs edition, and for the first time in Average Joe's Sports Talk history, we're going to have some picks now made here by Josh Abercrombie.
And we didn't want to do this. People have been asking for this for years, and we finally gave in and said, all right. And so we're going to make picks.
Yeah.
We're going to start out nice and easy. We're going to do one game per classification. See how it goes.
Hey, we'll see how it goes, and we'll get things started now at 1A. The game here, Marion County at Raglan. We've talked about this matchup already, myself and Bo. Who do you have winning this game between Marion County and Raglan?
Okay, the line on this is Raglan -5. Raglan is 6-4 under second-year head coach Wes Tidwell. The three losses, they have three losses to higher classifications, and ended the season with a loss to Spring Garden. They had an open week to end the season, so they've got 2 weeks of preparations. They got hot. The 4 weeks leading up to Spring Garden, they outscored their opponents 166-21. Player to watch for on Spring Garden for Raglan is senior wide receiver cornerback Jordan Turner. Big, 6'4", dynamic playmaker. They get him the ball in a variety of ways. Great hands, cannot be arm tackled. I would say take the 5 points, and I've got Raglan winning by about 28-21.
Should be a fun matchup there at 2A. Hatton going to be traveling to Pisgah. Tell us who you have in this matchup here.
You got Pisgah fighting Luke Pruitt playing at Deidre Pike Field.
I love it. I love it.
And for me, this has got to be one of the biggest slap in the faces that I have ever seen. Pisgah is 8-2 under Coach Luke Pruitt. Their losses were to Fife and Sylvania. That's a pretty good resume, right?
Yeah.
Playmakers all over the field. Quarterback Mason Holcomb, running backs Fox Tinker, left tackle A.J. Gant. And you know Pisgah likes to pop a pad or 72. So here's what's interesting. This Hatton team, they have got, I didn't know much about them. They've got some pretty good athletes, the best of which is an offensive lineman. Hey, when I say this guy's a dude, he's a dude. He is 6'4", 300 pounds, Braden Stafford. Get this, not only is he on the offensive lineman at 6'4", 300 pounds, he's also on the hands team.
That's pretty impressive there.
That is, and they say he's an amazing basketball player, baseball player. He will be playing on Saturdays. And you got quarterback Briley Kirby. He's comfortable running it and passing it. With that being said, I'm taking Pisgah, we'll say 28-17.
28-17, Pisgah. Looking at 3A, Sylvania, 7-point favorite against Fayette County. Tell us a little bit about this matchup and who you have winning this game.
Sylvania 7-3 under second-year head coach Tyler Van. Finished second in that very, very tough 3A Region 6 that we've talked about. Only losses were to Piedmont, Plainview, and Fife. That may not sound like much on the surface, but let me tell you the coaches. Piedmont, Steve Smith, Dale Pruitt, and Coach Paul Benefield, who are 5th, 12th, and 15 all-time win list. Now, if that's not a pretty good season, I would say Sylvania, they're 5-0 at home this year. I think they move on easily. I think that's going to be a 35-21 game.
35-21 for Sylvania, according to Josh. Aniana going to be traveling to Haleyville. This matchup that we talked about, really, really interesting matchup and a long trip for Aniana to go to Haleyville.
Let me reiterate, and I've got this on my notes. Aniana, 8-1, will be traveling to Haleyville, 6-4. That's just the way it goes sometimes, I guess. Don't be surprised if 4A Region 6 sweeps 4A Region 5. Wouldn't be surprised at all. This Aniana bunch fell just short of winning a state championship last season. Everyone knows about Fluff Bothwell. But keep an eye out for senior Mr. Everything, Braden Taylor. He is a defensive lineman, long snapper, and an all-you-can-eat pancake chef on Friday nights. So, very impressive. Go check out his huddle. I've got Aniana moving on. 31-21.
31-21 for Aniana. Leeds going to be hosting Fairfield in 5A. Leeds been dominant this year. They've played really great defense. Fairfield has had their struggles at times. I don't think it's a secret of who you have in this game, but tell us about this matchup and what is going to lead to Leeds coming away with the victory here.
I tried to pick some games that were going to be close. I could have taken the low-hanging fruit and went 7-0 if I wanted to this week. Chose not to. There really was not that game, so I just wanted to talk about Leeds.
Yeah.
Leeds have been very impressive. I think Coach Hood has them exactly where everyone expected him to have them when they hired him 4 years ago. So they've got weapons just all over the field. A lot of times the two best players on the field are those two defensive ends. They are just phenomenal. And then when you got Connor Nelson, and look, when Coach Etheridge vouches for you and says, "Hey, that guy's a baller," that's pretty legit.
Yeah, I'll take his word.
Yeah. So now, with that being said, those two defensive ends and Connor, they are all juniors and sophomores. They'll all be back next year. I've got Leeds rolling big on this one. We'll go 49-17.
Oh, wow. You think Fairfield's going to score 17 on Leeds?
I know, right?
Yeah, they hadn't even given up.
I'm trying not to step on any toes.
Hey, I understand. Gadsden City going to be hosting Coleman. This is one we talked about with Reggie. Big-time matchup here. Who do you have winning this game between Gadsden City and Coleman?
All right. The Alabama computers have got Gadsden City as a 4-point favorite. And I agree with that. Coach Ollie Smith and the Titans are riding a 4-game winning streak and an open week, so they're going to have an extra week of preparation. And let me just say this. There was some murmurs and some grumbling about that non-region schedule. It would have been great to have went undefeated if you're Gadsden City Titan. But all of that's about to pay off right now.
Yeah.
Playing those tough non-region games, it pays off in the playoffs. So Luke Waldrop, he's just he drops dimes. We've been talking to Luke, knowing Luke for 2 or 3 years now.
He was a freshman.
Yeah, I can't believe he's a senior.
No, he's a junior.
Oh, I can't believe he's a junior.
Yeah.
But let me talk about somebody real quick. Stephen Jones out there at cornerback. He has a very, very high football IQ. He does a great job at high pointing the ball, putting himself in a position to be successful on defending the pass. And he's going to need it because Coleman has a wide receiver by the name of Nate Zills, 6'5", 200, who is very hard to bring down after the catch. And he's also the kicker. Kicked a 50-yard field goal earlier this year. I'm going to put Gadsden City winning this game. We'll go 35-24.
35-24 for Gadsden City over Coleman. Last pick, 7A.
Hey, if there are any Gadsden City top football players, hey, don't listen to me. You listen to what Coach Ollie Smith tells you.
At 7A, Hoover going to be hosting Bob Jones. Hoover favored by 20 points here. Tell us a little bit about this matchup and this Hoover team that everybody kind of doubted after the first game of the year, and now they're on a 9-game win streak and with a win over Thompson under their belt.
I will take the low-hanging fruit when it comes to 7A. Easy win, but I wanted to talk about Hoover. I went and watched that Hoover-Thompson game, and that Hoover-Thompson 9-0 win, that was not a fluke. Hoover is just that tough on defense. They've got a running back by the last name of McCammon. He's pretty good. Yep. So the dynasty is not dead. It took a break, but it's not dead. I think coaches got them believing that they can win these games. They went out there and beat Thompson confidently. Now, can they do it twice if they meet up? That's the big question. I've got Hoover, we'll say 49-10.
49-10 for
49-10.
Hoover. That'll do it for us here for our first round edition of Road to the Blue Map, live from Buffalo Wild Wings in Gadsden. We want to thank AHSAA and Buffalo Wild Wings for their sponsorship here, and other sponsors coming on, and appreciate them allowing us to be here each and every week. And we'll be back next Thursday right here to break down round number 2 and get you set for the second round of the playoffs. So that'll do it for us here. Stay tuned with everything